Hi, folks. This is Jim Peacock with Peak Careers, and we have another really great interview today it's really about people who are thinking about starting a coaching business um, or have started one. And it's really about what to expect with how your business changes, really. So today, I wanted to add up how many years we've got between us, and maybe I'll do it at the end after we're all done. But I've got Mark Danaher, owner of markdanaher.com. Hannah Morgan, career Sherpa, who is a trainer and job search strategist, and Virginia Franco, who is the founder of Virginia Franco Resumes. And so we're going to play around with what was your business like when you started, and what are some of the biggest changes you've seen, and then some advice. Hannah, I have known for a while now, and we actually just met for the first time face to face last month. It was so exciting. I mean, to have known someone that long virtually, and so it was great. So Hannah teaches a seminar for me on using social media. Mark and we've known each other for a long time. First time I met you was when you came to Maine, and when you were president of National Career Development. You came to Maine and you spoke, and we've actually become pretty good friends since then. And we've taught some classes, we've done some conference presentations, and Virginia, I don't know Virginia as well, but she's been around. I follow her, and we're in a bunch of groups together. We're hanging with the same people, and I'm excited to sort of have this conversation today. So the full bios are there and for you folks to read, but let's just dive right in. Let's hear from each of you. Mark, we'll start with you. What was your coaching business when you first started, and how's it changed over the year? How many years do you have roughly? And then what are the biggest changes there?
So I have 17 years in coaching and really kind of starting off. And Jim, I want to thank you for having me today. And I was working in a career center in a high school. And what happened was teachers were coming in to see me as they were looking to retire. And they wanted to update their resume, they wanted to update their cover letter, and how do I find a part-time job? And that's what I did. I did that for a number of years, and I didn't have to do anything. There was no website, there was no email. I didn't even have contracts. Basically, they came in and gave me cash or a check, and I had a steady stream of customers. And then you had referrals from other schools as they had friends or family that were retiring. And that's how I really kind of got into coaching. It just started off in a small base, and it kind of came to me. And then basically, I really liked it. And I started to look into retirement coaching because it seemed to kind of fall into that. And it was good, but if I didn't work with the teachers, I wanted to get away from resumes and cover letters. I really wanted to help them look at more at life and more their career options, more than doing kind of the nitty gritty. That's not my kind of forte or what makes my heart sing. And as I started to go out and do more presentations around that, I wasn't finding the traction that I liked. People loved hearing the information, but they didn't want to commit to coaching. There was something holding them back around the retirement piece. So I gradually changed it to kind of look at career clarity and life confidence and building, that confidence and impact on what they can do and really helping struggling professionals. And so that's kind of changed over time from that point. And, when I started out, there was no tech, and I finally gradually added in more tech. It probably was at least 6 or 7 years before I had a website. I didn't need a website at the beginning. I had word of mouth, and I had traction from that point. So I didn't jump into the tech right away, which was good because I probably would have wasted a lot of money building things around teachers that maybe would have been changed. So I think that's an important piece for me, is that as I started to develop and found my passion, and I've gained more clarity as I've kind of tried each little piece, that's helped me out so much, because each year I go back and review, am I on the right path? Am I happy with what I'm doing and who I'm serving? And that's helped me define my niche more and more. So that's the big thing. And the other part is I started off, everything was me. I did everything at the beginning. As I developed a website, I created my own website. Then I learned about the 90-day plan and started doing that. I actually hired a business coach to help me kind of figure out a few things. Added in ActiveCampaign, started off with SurveyMonkey first, or MailChimp, and then used SurveyMonkey to do some different testing. And now I have active campaign to really put out different things in terms of emails, to do automations. My appointments are set up through Calendly, where before, we talked. I met everybody in person before. I don't think I meet anybody in person now. It's all virtual. It's all using Zoom or the phone. And my payments are automatic now. I think that's the best part. And I use lead magnets and automation to really connect in with new people to build outside of my Connecticut, setup. I've worked with people all over the US and occasionally internationally. And I think that's what's really changed. It's gone from this little small working out of a career center and happenstance of people walking in to now where it's more a US based and reaching out to different people that way.
Yeah, I mean, so you started with that one niche, that working with the teachers, and then like, oh, it's going to be the boomers, and that's kind of what happened with boomers was sort of my thing too, and it's evolved, and now you definitely have broadened that out, but you talk about offering coaching clients clarity, but that you really got your own clarity in that process. Yes. Right?
Oh, completely.
Yeah. Hannah, let's thank you, Mark. Hannah, let's hear a little bit about your business. How long have you been doing your side gig and full-time gig, and what are the biggest changes that you've seen?
I'm so glad Mark went first, because I think he articulated so much of what I kind of sort of went through, and he did it so much better, and he was so much more purposeful. I'm more of an accidental everything. But so this is how it started. I was working in a career center, a one-stop career center, and people were coming in to take my workshops, and they said, I really want more help with my resume. I really want more help with my job search. I'm like, okay, well, let's meet for coffee and we'll talk about it. So I would, this is 2009. So it was a very, very long time ago. So we would start talking, and I'd coach them, and so they would buy my coffee. That was about it, right? Then people in career centers at the college level started inviting me in to give presentations and would pay me. And I thought, I better start thinking my own thoughts and have some content and material available so that I have some credibility, because otherwise, who's this Hannah Morgan chick? So I started blogging, because that was about all there was to do back then. And there was not a lot of career advice online at all. There was nothing really online. So I was really fortunate to find a group of people that were blogging about career stuff, and we would partner and collaborate. And I think way back then, Virginia is probably where the early days we ran into each other. So that's how I started. I was working in a career center. I would get invited to local colleges and universities to give presentations that were paid gigs. And then, I loved group work. I didn't want to do a lot of one-on-one. So my writing was a way for me to build that following of people that might one day. So eventually I went out on my own, because it reached a point where I couldn't work the regular day hours, which was 8 to 5, really restrictive, and be able to help some of the individual clients that I was seeing, and be doing some of the speaking that I was doing. So that led me. So I think the important part that I want to say to people is, where are you going to get your clients from that will pay for you to survive in the early days? Because that takes a while. I think I did it part-time, sort of nights and weekends, and around my other job for a good couple of years, but I was moving slowly. And that gave me, when I was ready to go off on my own, I had clients, right? I had a pool of people. I had a newsletter with lots of subscribers so that I could start pitching stuff. And then, so the group thing was great while it was great. And then the pandemic happened, and people we couldn't meet in person. So we saw the shift, as Mark so nicely pointed out. The technology really was there. And like, I was always willing to do Zoom, and before Zoom, it was Skype, I would talk to anybody over Skype, but so many of the job seekers that I worked with only wanted to meet in person. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. So Zoom happened, and it made the technology and everything made it easier to happen over virtually. So courses and offering group sessions became easier, more acceptable after the pandemic. But clarity, let me talk about clarity for one quick second, and then I'll pass it over to Virginia. I think one of the things that I thought of in the beginning is that I can do one-on-one work and I can help people with their resumes, but that doesn't bring me joy. What I really prefer doing is group work. So working collaboratively in a group of people where I'm not the only person providing ideas, because that, to me, like working with groups of people is really much a better learning tool. So being clear on that took me a while. Like I thought that I had to only do one-on-one coaching, and you don't. There are many different ways to make this work.
Yeah, yeah. So you started blogging. I mean, and that is one thing you've kept going. You know,
Yeah.
you definitely have kept that going. But you know, it's interesting that there has been. What do you say is the biggest change in when you first started? Again, you were part-time and all that. You were doing the workshops, and you sort of have this business of Career Sherpa. But what do you think is the biggest change, though, as you reflect back?
I know I'm supposed to have an answer for this, but I I think like the technology has been the biggest change. But I think like I was a blogger, and that's how I built my reputation as a blogger, and now I'm able to do more than just blog, which I guess is because of technology and because of whatever things have changed. I think people are more open to clients, and people are more open to doing business with people that aren't in their own geographic location.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you really, you're on social media at a level that wasn't even available basically in 09. And I think who knows what will happen in,
Right.
10 years from now, what's going to be available. And I think it's, you got to kind of get out there and try some stuff, right? You got to try the blogging and do a workshop. And
that was my answer, right? That was supposed to be my answer, because I really embrace social media. I remember when Twitter first came up, I just had my 14th, December's my 14th year on Twitter. So that's pretty cool, right? I remember thinking, do I need this? Yeah, I'll try it, because I had already been on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, LinkedIn, that's sort of cool, right? So when these new tools came up, I'm like, oh, I'll see what that does. And it's been cool. Like, I like that part of it.
Yeah. So
now I'm on Post. For those of you that aren't on Post News. Virginia's there. Yeah.
Oh, you are? Okay. I'm going to have to add that to my list of.
It's an alternative to Twitter, because Twitter's becoming ugly.
I have 2 posts. I'm technically on barely.
Okay. So Hannah, how many years would you say you've had your private practice? What would you count that as?
Over 10.
My
math stinks.
Yeah. I mean, you said you started blogging in 09, so I kind of was thinking that would be about 13 years. So
yeah. Ish. Yeah.
Ish. Yeah, right. I mean, it all kind of starts. Like when did Peak Career started? Well, it was 01 kind of, but When
did I start my website? I think like my blog website, that was 2009. So
yeah.
That's a start.
Awesome. Virginia, let's hear your story.
And mine is so much like what Mark has said. And Hannah, when you said I was accidental, that's totally how I describe myself. I'm an accidental everything. I have said this before, but I always wrote resumes for free. Didn't have any idea that anyone made a living doing it. But my sort of career crisis happened in 08 when I had 2 kids, went for third, ended up with 4, and that sort of turned my world upside down. My husband had taken a big pay cut during the recession, and I had to figure out how the heck to make a living without drowning in childcare. And so I had always kept up my writing. My degree was in journalism, and so I wrote for like little magazines and just little articles here and there just to keep my skills fresh. And when I really needed to figure out something, I discovered completely accidentally that people actually did this for a living. And so I spoke with a person who owned a company, and she sort of said, well, you don't know much about official resume writing, but I can tell you're a good writer. Here's some training you should go to. And I started doing that while I was also piecemealing lots of other work. So at one point, I think I was subbing or subcontracting for maybe 3 different resume writing companies, while I also wrote for a local newspaper, a couple magazines, a couple of blogs. Remember Livestrong, that Lance Armstrong one, and travel.com, just all these random websites that people would hire me to do. But what was good is it got me really comfortable with working virtually. And it made me realize how lucky we all are that back then, all you needed was a computer and an internet connection and a phone, and you could start a business, which was something that was so foreign to me prior to that. I went out on my own when my youngest went to kindergarten. I'm horrible with math, but it was when I finally had enough time to really devote myself to marketing. And by then, because I've worked with lots of different companies, I sort of knew what I liked and what I didn't like about different ways to run a business. So I took a what do you call it, a teleseminar class called Entrepreneurial Elegance that Louise Kurzmark taught. And she said, have a website and, start a mailing list, just very basic things. And so I did all those things, and I officially launched. And I was getting enough word of mouth just from, at that point, clients of subcontracting, and the business was able to grow as my free time grew. What else? I started, like Hannah, with the blogging that I knew how to write. That was in my comfort zone. But I got really good advice. I ended up hiring a coach at one point because I didn't know how to sell at all. And she said, pick a niche. And that doesn't mean you only take those clients, but that's what you write about. And so I was like, well, I like healthcare sales and I like writing for executives, so I'll write about that. And I was able to get my name in a lot of publications. I didn't get a dime, but I got a byline. And then and that allowed me to then repurpose those same articles and you put them on my own website and my own LinkedIn and sort of get traction that way. So it was a nice way to grow my business. And then I sort of discovered social media from there because I needed to share those articles.
So much of this is, it's growing that business, right? You start off, doing what you have to do, right? You're doing it on the side. You got kids running around the house, and
yeah,
finally off to school they go, and then it gives you that space. But like you, I mean, and Mark said he hired a business coach as well. I mean, I didn't hire a business coach initially, but because I was part-time. But I'm an extrovert, so I'm always reaching out, trying to get advice. That was sort of my style, and so I did use small business administration, and I reached out to them, and they helped me put together a business plan. Well, I came from higher ed. I'm like, what's a business plan? I mean, what is that? And they're, she's like working with me to put together a plan. And well, how much money are you going to make next year? I'm like, how am I supposed to know? Nope, you got to do it, and I'm like, all right. So I put it out, put the business plan out. And I can remember thinking I was really a hot shot, thought I had this whole business plan figured out. And I went in to meet with her, and she says, you're out of money in July. And I was like, okay, Houston, we got a problem, and one of the funniest things was that was pretty funny, I thought, because I was like, okay, I guess that didn't work so good. But I remember going back to that business plan a year later and realizing that 50% of it was inaccurate at this point. And I think if there's one lesson I want the viewers to get is, you do need to make a plan. You do need to make the best plan that you have. You got to, whatever your plan is, if it's going to be to blog and do the workshops, or if it's going to be to do resume writing and subcontract under people, you know, you got to start somewhere. But hopefully, and I think I just heard all this, so I'd love to hear what, you know, more thoughts from any of you. You really do need to be adaptable. I mean, you really have to kind of go, if you're going to own your own business, you got to go. I looked at that business plan and 50% of it was wrong. But the good news is 50% of it was right. Right. I was able to, and I still have to do this all the time. What's working, what isn't. If it's not working, either revamp it, revise it, or remove it. Right. I mean, you got to do something with it, and to sort of pull that together. So I don't know, any other thoughts on that?
I think
I guess you go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead, Virginia.
Sure. I lost my train of thought. That to me, I don't know how to make a business plan to this day, and I really never make goals more than 1 year out because number one, I hate math, but I just, life throws curveballs, and it certainly did before the pandemic, and the pandemic was on steroids. I sort of assess every year, how has my life changed, and do I need to make adjustments in my business based on that? And so my business has greatly evolved, and I think that's okay. Nothing is set in stone.
Yeah, I love that, Virginia. I think when I have met with people who say, "Oh, I want to do what you do, Hannah. What do I need to know?" I'm like, the first thing you need to know is that job seekers don't have any money and they don't like to pay for things, right? So you have to build a model that adjusts for that, right? So what does that mean? It means, well, you can't be charging. I mean, in general, right? There are a few that do, but if somebody's unemployed, they don't have money. So you need to figure out how can you provide services where you're not charging the client, you're charging a business, or you're getting a grant through a library or a college or university. You have to find alternative ways and that means you have to understand who your audience is, right? And who your ideal client is. I love working with unemployed job seekers because I understand the trauma that they're going through, and I really love helping them. So I don't want to go work with a different audience just because this audience can't pay.
Well, and I think so many people in our industry come to this as people that want to help. I was a social worker for a little bit as well, and so it was painful to raise prices and all that. And so balancing, how do you give back while still earning a living, that's a hard challenge, I think, for a lot of people in our industry.
And that's what, for me, I struggle with that as well. And that is, but I'm going to charge, I have a certain fee I'm going to charge them, and I make money, but I can give away or do freebies, or I can give hugely reduced to makes me feel better. Right. I mean, and Mark, I'm sorry, I think I might've cut you off.
The same thing. I mean, it is hard, because you have to make some money, but I always do some freebies. But the biggest thing I want to talk about too, about adaptability, and I take this from Jim's lead of a tech-free day of going to do planning and retreat, is just getting away. And Virginia, I don't have a business plan. I do 90-day plans. I don't have a long-term business plan. I have ideas, but it's 90 days at a time, and my goal is what I do, and that's what I'll look at and do those half days just to get away from everything and just focus on what worked, what didn't work. So I have a chance to have a clear head and not get caught up in the social media and other things that that pull you away from that planning and the deep thought. So that's how I look at it. And you do have to be adaptable. And I do give away coaching to some people because they can't afford it and they need the help. Some are reduced rates. Sometimes it's a barter, in terms of they may have something that they can offer me, and then we work out something from that end. So
the business plan, I don't do the business plan anymore, but the business plan, I will tell you the benefit of doing that and working with small business administration was it really forced me to get my head around what it takes to run a small business, right? I mean, they were like, well, what does this cost? How are you going to get this? And is this free, or is this, can you, SurveyMonkey or MailChimp? I started as like Mark, I started with MailChimp because it's free, and then I kind of outgrew that. But that was the nice thing about that when I started. It kind of, she was able to sort of go, think about this, think about this, think about this, think about this, rather than, you know, for me, I would have been much more shotgun and tried stuff and then realized that, you know, I didn't know what I was doing, you know, which still happens today. I mean, I still don't know what I'm doing. And that's, I got to tell you, you're not going to have all the answers having your own business. You just got to get out there. And I think this whole idea of adaptability quotient, you know, when we think about IQs, I think adaptability quotient is for our clients and for us. I mean, if you're going to own it, it's all about adapting.
I think one of the things that you pointed out is that having people that you can talk to who have gone through this, like us, like find people and use more than one person, talk to them, you know, looking back on your business, what would you have done differently? And what do you think I really will need to be successful in today, if I were to start a business today? Because I think that, I did not have the same positive experience you did, Jim, with a small business administration person. I was talking to them about my plan, and my plan was to do virtual coaching. And they're like, what? They didn't understand. No. Skype? You're going to do this over Skype?
You got to get the right person. Yeah.
Right. So they were used to brick and mortar, right? And they couldn't relate to what I was doing. So that's why it's important to talk to people who are doing what you're doing. And I have found that any coach that anyone who does anything in our space is so willing to share their experience and their technology and what they've learned along the way. They're just a really amazing group of giving people. Yeah.
So we've kind of nudged ourselves into question number 2, which is, what advice would you give to people? I think we have given some advice, but I'm going to circle back to that to make sure we get to that question. So Virginia, let's start with you. What advice do you have for people who are either started off a business or are thinking about starting a business? What advice would you give?
So first off, talk to other people, what everyone else is saying. I found a lot of support through some professional associations. For me, it was the National Resume Writers Association, but there's NCDA, there's just a lot of them. And those organizations have regular calls. They have now they have social media forums, they have annual conferences, and it's just all people doing what you do. And there, in addition to being able to listen to speakers, there's just a lot of side chat that goes on where you can ask those sorts of questions. My other advice is, don't feel like you have to have it all figured out all at once. I would have been really overwhelmed if someone had thrown out, you need an email list and social media handles and a website and all those things all at once. I probably would have gone and worked at Target. I don't know what I would have done. But being able to figure it out little by little made it feel much less overwhelming for me.
Well, that's great advice. Hannah, what are some of your thoughts on that?
I'm going to say that it's my biggest piece of advice would be to start part-time. Test your idea part-time while you have an income coming in, which makes it less risky, scary. Because I think, as we've said, things are going to change, and your idea, while you think it's going to be a great idea, may not be the greatest idea, and you may need to shift it. So before you go all in, test it out. Test your idea, you know, take in some practice clients, or, you know, some freebie clients, some test guinea pigs, whatever you want to call them. Test your idea to make sure that it is what you think it's going to be. Pilot it, right? Innovate on it, whatever we need to do. So yeah, and I find your tribe, and whether that is people who, like Virginia said, whether it's a professional association or people that you're tangentially aligned with. Like, so if I have a friend who's is a massage therapist, and she has aligned herself with other massage therapists and people who do holistic medicine and Reiki and all that stuff. So if you find your tribe, people who do similar kinds of business, you might be able to grow incrementally faster and share ideas and find your community.
Yeah. Mark.
You know what Virginia and Hannah said. I mean, it's all that. I think it's just, you don't have to rush in. You know, like Virginia said, you don't have to have everything at once. Start small, pick one thing. And my thing is, figure out who your niche audience is. What are their pain points? What are their challenges? what solutions are you going to be able to provide, and test it out, like Hannah said, because in the end, you don't know if it's going to be right or wrong, but, do some free coaching, build some relationships out there. It's an important part, because you don't want to put everything in and say, oh, this is my site, this is what I want to do. And you dump all this money in, and you dump all this time, and then you start and you go, ooh, it doesn't really resonate with me, or it's not going to really pay the bills and allow me to do what I want. And I think that's the important part, doing it part-time, starting off, and really join into the groups, join into associations. They're great ways to network, and don't come from a scarcity mindset. I think some people always like, oh, there's only so many people out there that we can help. Go with abundance. There are so many people out there that are looking for coaching and looking for our assistance, and reach out and find them. You'll see it. And, I have to say, with NCDA and a few other associations, I've made some great relationships that have helped me grow as a coach and help grow as understanding more about career development and where I want to go. And I think that's the important part, is get involved and build relationships so your network is strong and can help you along the way.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we ever told a client that networking is important? I mean, it's the same. We could actually just change seats every once in a while. All the advice I would give to a client, I could just give to myself, right? I mean, that networking is where you kind of you get some ideas sometimes, but you can also test your message, right? I mean, you get out there and say, well, because I started off working with boomers, I had 500 flyers that I put around town, and I met with financial consultants in town, and I left them over there. I put them in the coffee shops, and like 2 years ago, I just threw away 480 of them. I mean, it just didn't work. I mean, now, was it because the message was wrong? Was it because the timing wasn't right? Was it wrong because of something I did? I don't know, but all I know is that I had to shift, but I was able to network, found out what was going to work, get my message so that I could tell it better. And then, you can tell when it's working, because, you got your niche, and you find their pain points, right? And you begin to talk to those pain points, and you begin to figure it out. And you got to be patient, right? I mean, stuff doesn't work. Things don't work that fast in this business. I mean, if I wanted to see clients, I should have stayed at the community college, because I used to see like 10, 15 people a day, and when I started Peak Careers in February 2012, full-time Peak Careers, I mean, I was sitting here all by myself, man. With nobody. I didn't have any clients. I didn't have a client for a while, right? I mean, because stuff takes time. And I mean, don't tell my wife, and she probably won't watch this video, so it doesn't matter. But I mean, like, we were like kind of out of money one December. Like we were like out of money, and I was like, I knew there was a check coming in January, but I was like, we were kind of out of money, and I was like, okay, but you sometimes it's gonna get weak, and then it's gonna come back, and it came back, and it can be scary, I mean, if it's your full-time gig, it can be scary, which is why Hannah says, start part-time, which is true. And I mean, it's a little safer.
Here's the other thing that I think we didn't talk about, but I think it's an important reminder, is that working as a coach, we love the activity of helping people. But what we forget is there's this whole other part of our business that we have to do, like the accounting and the marketing and the tech support and all of that stuff. And I don't want people to get overwhelmed by that, but that is a huge part of doing this. So if you're not really good with accounting, you're gonna need to get a virtual assistant, or find somebody who does have that strength that you have to pay to do that. And then you have to bake that into your pricing. So that's the other part of the business that's not so fun and glamorous. And you don't want to get ruined because of those mistakes.
That's such a good point. And just like we tell our clients, get help from others that do this as it's an area of their expertise. I feel like we need to follow that as well. I didn't know how to sell. I had a coach that taught me how to do that stuff. I knew I was a really good writer, but if I couldn't convince other people, it was going to hurt my business. I have an accountant for sure. But yeah, you need support in areas that aren't your areas of strength.
And I would say too, with a virtual assistant, I would get it sooner than later, just even if it was a couple hours a week, just to help you get rid of some of the small stuff so that you can get out and talk to people and do some of your marketing. You know, because I do have an accountant. I went to a lawyer to set up a few things to make sure that was set. You know, occasionally if I'm doing a longer piece, I hire an editor because I want to make sure, because that's not a strong point for me. So, you know, having those pieces, think about the assistants out there, because in the end, when you're struggling, you're not producing what you want to produce because you're so worried about, how do I do this? Where somebody else can come in and do it at a lot cheaper cost than you spending 3-4 hours trying to figure it out.
I can still remember getting to the point, well, I can't afford a virtual assistant. I can't afford, I couldn't afford not to get a virtual assistant. I mean, you got to remember, like Mark just said, there's all that busy work that's just not good use of your time, right? I mean, I was scheduling on Hootsuite. I was taking 2.5 hours on Monday mornings to schedule stuff on Hootsuite and stuff. Where now I just ship that stuff to my virtual assistant, and she does it, and it's great, and it's much better use of my time and money, and again, you don't have to spend. It's not limitless. You're not saying I'm going to spend. You know, you're going to get, you know, $500 a month every single month, but you figure out what works for you. And for me, it was like all the stuff on the to-do list that kept showing up every single day on the to-do list, because I didn't really want to do it, you know, and I would just sort of like to not do it. And I finally got a virtual assistant. So if it stays on my to-do list for more than 2 or 3 days, I ship it to somebody, you know, because it's not good use of your time. You know, that's not what you're in business for. Listen, I try to keep these to 25 minutes, but I want more from you guys. We may have to do a follow-up on this, but any final thoughts or advice that from any of you? Virginia.
To me, this is a great era to start your own business. There's so many ways to market yourself that weren't available. You can do audio stuff, you could do camera stuff, you can do blogging, you can do presentations. There's just, the sky's the limit. So I feel like it's sort of low risk with a lot of these things. And all those things are free. So
yeah.
I'm a believer in multiple income streams. So if there is a way, and it doesn't even really matter what those other streams are, right? So if you are starting your own business and you've left your job and you want to do this coaching, find other ways to bring in money that are somehow tangentially related, so that you don't put all of your financial eggs in one basket. For the longest time, I worked at a college career center as a subcontractor, and I got way too comfortable there, and I spent all of my time and energy there, even though I was part-time, and I let the other parts of my business fall, so that when that contracting gig ended, I had to go back and build stuff back up to replace that income.
And the one thing I'll add too is find an accountability partner. So it could be somebody else starting in the coaching business, or it could be somebody with a little more experience, but have check-ins. So that way you have somebody that you can kind of see, how's it going? What's happening? You know, this didn't work. You're a little frustrated. You can talk it through with each other. You can plan out ways to market. And I think that's a great way to keep you moving forward. When you hit those struggles and you're like, I want to give up, or I'm just going to let it go, you can really help each other and motivate one another to get to a better place.
Well, thank you guys. And we're going to, unfortunately, I'm going to wrap it up, because I really do try to keep these at 25 minutes, but I can't stop myself. I want to keep going. But we're going to stop here, and if we need to, we'll come back and do a round 2 at some point. But I'm Jim Peacock with Peak Careers Consulting, and I started this business in 2001 with the Facilitating Career Development class, and then I've developed these online discussion-based seminars, which are a little unique. They're really discussion-based. They have a cohort of career practitioners in them, and so we're all totally online, but we're taking different career topics and actually talking about them, and have different articles and videos and what to watch each week. Hannah teaches one class, Mark and I teach another. Mark is developing another one on working with boomers. So there's a number of options off the website. I love doing workshops, and it's been great since COVID that they're starting to come back. And also the author of a field guide for career practitioners, and The Adventure of Finding Me in New Zealand is another book. It's not a career book, but it's another book that I wrote recently. If you are a career practitioner or provide career services and you want to receive my weekly career email, you can sign up at this link here and you get the top 10 tips of working with an undecided person. And feel free to connect with me on any of these platforms, but it's LinkedIn is my home. That's my place that I'm most active, and feel free to reach out to me. Thank you all for talking about this great topic.